interview by saying congratulations on the film. It's an important film and it's an amazing film. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that means a lot. It's definitely been hitting people in a specific way, which is really great. Yeah, we're super happy.
So where did the journey start for you with this film? Like, where did the idea for this documentary first begin?
Yeah, it actually began through research into another feature film entirely called Traces, which is a project still in production, shot entirely with thermal imaging cameras looking at the human body at the moment of death. So we began research on that project in 2015, and over about 2.5 to 3 years we contacted upwards of 1,500 death doulas and hospices, dying with dignity organisations in Australia, but also internationally, like Canada, the UK, Europe. And after a really exhaustive, over 3 year research process, our subject, Robert Rosenzweig, actually heard about this other project through his Dying with Dignity non-profit in Washington State in the US, and decided that he would participate in Traces, but he actually contacted us to say that he would also love us to come and film the last 7 days of his life. So it was Bob who instigated the film, actually.
So how did that make you feel when Bob first approached you? I mean, that is a pretty difficult thing to spend the last 7 days of somebody's life with them, let alone filming it. What was your initial reaction when he reached out to you?
Yeah, I think I was definitely, I wouldn't say reticent, but yeah, I was definitely cautious to step into something that, could certainly go awry in like innumerable ways. I think it was as soon as we had that first FaceTime conversation with Bob, and Jesse, his carer, was also on the call, could really see that we got on extremely well. Bob, being a New Yorker and from Queens in particular, he really had a very little filter in many ways. So we were able to get to the crux of what the complexity of around shooting might be. I think during that first FaceTime call, though, Jesse, his son, was understandably pretty skeptical of a group of 4 strangers coming over. He contacted us only 3 weeks out from when we arrived to meet him, so it all happened extremely quickly. But it was a mixture of Bob's unbelievably sort of forthright and resolute take on what he wanted from the project, and then also as just ethically speaking and as filmmakers, we very quickly worked out with Jesse that we wouldn't be asking the family to sign the usual release forms, and that we would hold off on that until we basically had a rough cut of the film, and that Jesse would be the one who would approve the final project. And that actually happened a year later when we returned to meet the family and spread Bob's ashes, and that's when the film was finally approved. So it was a really specific, accelerated series of circumstances that we had to navigate.
How do you mentally prepare for that as well as the filmmaker? Because it's, like you said, it's a project where a lot of things could go wrong. It's a project where you're working with people with heightened emotions. So how did you mentally prepare yourself for that as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I had another series of phone calls that, just between Bob and I, just to get to know one another as much as possible. And I think the honest answer is I tried to prepare, but in many ways, Bob was in such a specific headspace that was very accelerated and very, as you say, very heightened. So each day he would actually, take us, the crew, which is Alice Jamison Dowd, our producer, and Steve Bond, sound recordist, and Jacqueline Fitzgerald, our cinematographer, and he would sit us down for these daily sort of producerial like debriefs where he would talk about how he felt the day went, what we could do better, what we felt we did well. So he really was. I think his background in management and just how much he wanted this film to be made led him to really be kind of leading the charge in many respects. But to answer that question, I don't think I could have prepared fully, and I just landed in Washington, and we just tried to keep up with Bob in many respects.
And what do you want your audience to take away from this film? Like you said, it's a very, very powerful film, and I read a statistic recently that really surprised me, where it said that almost 70% of people still don't fully understand what euthanasia means and what the process is. So what were you trying to do with the documentary, and what do you want your audience to take away from the film?
Yeah, look, I mean, outside of larger questions around an increasingly secular society in the West, I think we need to integrate death into our lives in a healthier way, in a way that allows us to be preparing through our lives, and that doesn't have to be at all a morose or a morbid thing. That was my primary interest, triggering those kind of conversations, rather than the film being overtly like didactic or being an advocacy film about euthanasia. Having said that, I'm obviously I agree with people's right to choose to end their lives with medical assistance in the right circumstances. But I think what I'd really love audiences to take away is the film for me is more a celebration of Bob as a human being and Bob's life and his spirit, and it's about what one person can be afforded emotionally when they are given a gift of sorts in terms of knowing the date of their death in advance, and how that allows them to make amends and have conversations, prepare in a way that many people aren't given, in terms of having that space and having a framework to do that. I hope audiences, though, once they finish the film, really just maybe lead their lives with a little more urgency, or as one audience member from our world premiere screening in the UK recently said, once I stop crying, I'm going to call my mum and tell her I love her. So I'd like people just to basically be more open and honest with kind of those around them. Hopefully it triggers something in them to do that.
Definitely. Now, you just mentioned the fact that this is a celebration of Bob's life, and his legacy lives on because of this film. Did you feel that pressure when you were making the film, that this is such an important film because of that legacy and what you were doing for Bob? Did you feel the pressure as a filmmaker while you were working on it?
Look, absolutely, and I should say as well, as a crew, we also multiple times asked Bob if he wanted to we could fly him to see his partner who lived on the other side of the country, or if he wanted to delay his decision, or we could fly him to for a holiday to Mexico for a few days. So we were really because we became really close very quickly. We also at some point in the shoot, it would be disingenuous to say that we weren't questioning Bob's decision, and wanted to make sure that he'd done everything he wanted to do. Having said that, I think the pressure that I felt, because Bob contacted us, because in his inimitable way, he said, I want this film to be shown to as many people as humanly possible. So I think the pressure to do justice to his spirit and his really kind of wonderful humor and his character and his compassion and curiosity and drive through his life, I didn't fully realize the impact of that until we actually screened the film publicly. I must admit, it was sort of a strange mixture of like relief that the film was in the world for Bob, and also kind of a slightly delayed grieving process. So it was definitely a filmmaking experience, very, very unlike any other I'd had.
You've mentioned your crew a couple of times now, and you've put together an absolutely amazing crew for this film. A lot of them are award winners or award nominated crew members. Tell us a little bit about how you were able to put that crew together and what they were like to work with.
Absolutely, yeah. So really, really lucky to have collaborated with a lot of our crew over the years on previous narrative feature films and documentaries. And I think first and foremost, the subject matter and the clarity and the really clear potential impact of this film made it very easy for a really wonderful caliber of folk to come on board. So we had it was also unbelievably important to assemble crew on the ground who I knew would be just absolutely sensitive and could, well, I mean, also just get on well with Bob and ideally become, I mean, to give you a sense of how intense the process was, I think it's like there's a scene in the film where he welcomes the crew into his family, and I think that only happened like 10 hours into meeting him. So there really was this we got very, very lucky with wonderful cinematographer Jacqueline Fitzgerald, again Steve Bond, our sound recordist. I think he's my favourite sound recordist in the country. He's remarkable, and Alice Jamison Dowd, who's a producer who's working with me on two other upcoming feature projects. So crew on the ground, all absolutely sensitive and wonderful. And then in terms of post, we were really lucky to work with Pete Chibris, who I'd worked with on my feature Hail, and we had Nicola Becker, French sound designer, contribute to the score, as well as Luca Capelli, wonderful Italian editor, and then we also were really lucky to have the EPs, Michael McMahon and the director Sophie Hyde, and many, many others. So it was one of those projects where people just seemingly were happy to kind of put down everything and just come on board to help tell Bob's story, which was, again, the whole process has been kind of beyond humbling, to be honest with you.
Definitely. Now, the film is screening for our listeners out there at the Melbourne International Film Festival. What are the plans beyond that? Are you looking to do a cinema release or a streaming release? What are the plans for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really an exciting one in terms of interest that we're gaining in terms of certainly a US release. We will have a theatrical release through Bonsai, a wonderful Australian New Zealand distributor, and then we're also planning a really extensive sort of alternative distribution plan that will encompass kind of impact campaign and also like community outreach, both here in Australia and also internationally. We're also as part of that, we've got sort of ongoing philanthropic campaign for those attendant costs. But it has a built-in audience. But I'm also particularly interested in getting it to people, as you say, who may not understand the intricacies of that legislation and what it means to make that decision.
Definitely. Well, Amiel, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an honour having you on the show, and I can't tell people enough to go and see this film because it's an absolutely amazing film. And I guess to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are thinking about going along and checking out the film?
Absolutely. I'd like to tell people that the film really is a surprising journey through a otherwise potentially difficult subject. There's a lot of humour. Bob is really just a remarkable character, and as counterintuitive as it sounds, the film actually is very uplifting, and as one other audience member said, kind of a very nourishing and surprising journey. So I look forward to seeing people there.